Fleetwood Mac, one of the most legendary rock bands of all time. A group that redefined rock and pop.
Fleetwood Mac is one of the most legendary rock bands of all time, a group that reshaped rock and pop music and sold over 120 million records worldwide, but behind the fame, the awards, and the unforgettable songs was a story filled with intense emotion, broken trust, and creative clashes, and at the center of it all stood Lindsey Buckingham, the musical force who helped define the band's signature sound with his intricate guitar style, bold production ideas, and fearless songwriting. Yet the same brilliance that pushed Fleetwood Mac to global stardom also fueled deep tension, because the relationships inside the band were never simple. Love turned into rivalry, personal struggles bled directly into the music, and after decades of highs and lows, one shocking decision in 2018 changed everything when Buckingham was suddenly removed from the band he helped build, leaving fans asking what really led to his exit and whether it truly marked the end of an era. The story begins in the late 1960s in Northern California, where two young musicians, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, first crossed paths. They attended the same high school but didn't connect right away. Lindsey was already deeply focused on music, a quiet but driven guitarist who practiced endlessly, while Stevie was drawn to poetry and melodies, still searching for her true voice. Their worlds finally collided at a casual gathering when Lindsey picked up a guitar and began to play, and Stevie instinctively joined in with harmony, a brief moment that revealed a powerful musical chemistry neither of them could ignore. That chemistry grew stronger when Lindsey joined a local band called Fritz, which was gaining attention in the Bay Area by blending rock and psychedelic sounds. Someone suggested bringing Stevie in as a singer, and though it was unexpected, it changed everything. Her voice added a new emotional layer, and soon Fritz was opening shows for major artists like Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Santana, giving Lindsey and Stevie an early glimpse of the life they dreamed of, but recognition didn't translate into stability. Record labels passed them over, the music scene shifted, and by the early 1970s the band dissolved, leaving Lindsey and Stevie at a crossroads with years of effort behind them and no clear future ahead. Instead of walking away, they took a leap of faith together and moved to Los Angeles to pursue music as a duo, determined to succeed on their own terms. This became Buckingham Nicks, their first true attempt to create something personal. They poured everything they had into writing and recording, scraping together money just to finish an album, and in 1973 Buckingham Nicks was released. It was emotional, raw, and filled with undeniable talent. Lindsey's detailed guitar work paired with Stevie's haunting voice created a sound that felt intimate and powerful, yet the industry didn't respond. The album failed commercially, radio stations ignored it, and the duo struggled just to survive. During this period their partnership grew deeper, blending music and romance, but the constant rejection weighed heavily on them, forcing them to question their choices. Still they refused to quit, taking small gigs and odd jobs, Lindsey doing session work and Stevie working long hours just to pay rent, unaware that one moment in a recording studio was about to change their lives forever. By 1974 they were barely getting by when fate stepped in at Sound City Studios, where Mick Fleetwood, drummer and founder of Fleetwood Mac, happened to be searching for a new guitarist after yet another lineup change. While walking through the studio he heard Lindsey's guitar playing and immediately stopped. The rhythm, the precision, the originality, it was unlike anything he had heard before. When he learned it was Lindsey Buckingham, he knew he had found the missing piece. Lindsey was offered the role, but he refused to join without Stevie, insisting they were a package deal. It was a major gamble for Fleetwood Mac, who had never featured a female lead vocalist, but with support from Christine McVie, the band agreed, and just like that a new lineup was formed: Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, Christine McVie, Lindsey Buckingham, and Stevie Nicks. In 1975 the newly formed band released Fleetwood Mac, and almost overnight everything changed. Lindsey's guitar brought a sharper, modern edge, Stevie added a mystical presence, and the chemistry was undeniable. Songs like Rhiannon and Landslide connected deeply with listeners, pushing the band into mainstream stardom. The album climbed the charts, sold millions, and turned Fleetwood Mac into one of the biggest acts in America. But behind the success, tension quietly grew, creative differences and emotional strain followed them into the studio, setting the stage for what came next. By 1976 the band was more successful than ever, yet internally everything was unraveling. Lindsey and Stevie, once inseparable, could barely communicate. John and Christine McVie's marriage was ending, and Mick Fleetwood faced struggles of his own. The studio became the only place they could channel their emotions, and instead of avoiding the pain, they poured it into music, creating Rumours. An album built from honesty and raw feeling. Every song felt like a message. Lindsey released his frustration through Go Your Own Way, while Stevie responded with the reflective and emotional Dreams. Christine offered hope through Don't Stop. The recording process was exhausting and chaotic, but somehow the result was timeless. When Rumours was released in 1977, it became a global phenomenon, selling over 40 million copies and cementing Fleetwood Mac's place in music history. Yet success didn't heal old wounds, it only magnified them. The band faced overwhelming pressure to follow up such a massive achievement, and when they returned to the studio, Lindsey pushed the group in a bold new direction with Tusk, an experimental album that challenged expectations. While it sold well, it divided critics and deepened internal conflict, especially between Lindsey and Stevie, whose relationship continued to deteriorate, turning performances into emotionally charged moments that audiences could feel. By the mid-1980s, the band was exhausted, and as they worked on Tango in the Night, Lindsey once again took creative control, crafting a polished and modern sound that produced massive hits. But the pressure was relentless, and when it came time to tour, Lindsey decided he couldn't continue. The announcement led to explosive disagreements, and in 1987 he left Fleetwood Mac, stunning fans and altering the band's future. Replacements were brought in, tours continued, but the dynamic was never the same. Years later, in 1997, the classic lineup reunited for a special performance that reignited the magic, leading to a massive tour and the release of The Dance, proving that despite everything, the connection still existed, but old tensions never fully disappeared. And in 2018, as the band prepared for another tour, conflicts resurfaced, resulting in Lindsey Buckingham being removed once again, this time for good, closing the door on any future reunion. Today, the legacy of Fleetwood Mac remains untouchable. Their music continues to reach new generations, and much of that legacy is inseparable from Lindsey Buckingham's vision, his guitar style, his production genius, and his willingness to turn personal chaos into unforgettable music defined the band's most iconic years. Even outside of Fleetwood Mac, his solo work reflects the same passion and creativity. And while the journey was filled with conflict and sacrifice, the music is what endures, reminding us that behind every legendary band is a deeply human story, and at the heart of Fleetwood Mac's greatest era was Lindsey Buckingham, the visionary who transformed emotion into sound that will live forever. After the events of 2018, the world watched as Fleetwood Mac moved forward without Lindsey Buckingham once again, but this time felt different, heavier, more final. There were no hints of reconciliation, no vague promises of future collaboration, just silence and distance. For Lindsey, the removal was not just a professional setback, it was the closing of a chapter that had defined most of his adult life, a chapter filled with ambition, creativity, and emotional intensity that few artists ever experience on such a massive scale. In the months following his departure, Lindsey retreated from the public eye, focusing on his health, his family, and most importantly, his music. While Fleetwood Mac continued touring with new musicians, many fans felt an unmistakable absence. Something intangible but essential was missing: the sharp edge, the rhythmic complexity, the unmistakable sound that Lindsey had brought to the band for over 4 decades. And while the shows continued to sell out, debates raged among listeners about whether Fleetwood Mac could truly be Fleetwood Mac without him. For Lindsey, this period became one of reflection. He had spent years fighting to protect his artistic vision, often clashing with bandmates and industry executives who wanted safer, more predictable results, and now, for the first time in decades, he was completely free from those battles, free to create without compromise, free to explore ideas without needing approval, and free to define his own legacy outside the shadow of one of the biggest bands in history. He returned to the studio not with the goal of proving anything, but simply to express himself. His later solo work reflected maturity, introspection, and a sense of calm that had often been missing during his years with Fleetwood Mac. The songs were less about conflict and more about understanding, less about pushing against others and more about looking inward, yet the signature elements remained: intricate guitar patterns, layered harmonies, and a deep emotional core that listeners instantly recognized as uniquely Lindsey Buckingham. As time passed, interviews began to surface where Lindsey spoke openly about his experiences, not with bitterness, but with honesty. He acknowledged the pain, the misunderstandings, and the moments that still hurt, but he also emphasized gratitude for the music they created, gratitude for the chance to reach millions of people, and gratitude for the role Fleetwood Mac played in shaping his life as an artist. He made it clear that while the ending was difficult, he did not regret the journey. Meanwhile, the story of Fleetwood Mac continued to evolve. Christine McVie's passing marked a deeply emotional moment for fans and band members alike, further cementing the idea that an era had truly come to an end. With each passing year, it became increasingly clear that the classic lineup would never share a stage again, and rather than diminishing the legacy, this finality seemed to elevate it, turning Fleetwood Mac into a closed chapter of musical history, complete, untouchable, and immortal. Younger generations began discovering the band not through radio, but through films, television, and online platforms. Songs like Dreams, Landslide, The Chain, and Go Your Own Way found new life decades after their release, often becoming viral moments, reinterpreted and rediscovered by listeners who weren't even born when the music was first created. And through this resurgence, Lindsey Buckingham's influence became more apparent than ever. His guitar work stood out as something timeless, complex yet accessible, emotional yet precise. Musicians across genres openly cited him as an inspiration, praising his unconventional approach to rhythm guitar, his willingness to break traditional structures, and his ability to turn deeply personal feelings into universally relatable music. Many pointed out that without Lindsey's creative leadership, Fleetwood Mac might never have evolved beyond its early blues roots. It was his vision that helped bridge the gap between raw emotion and polished production, creating a sound that felt both intimate and grand. Despite this growing recognition, Lindsey remained relatively low-key, preferring small tours and intimate performances over massive productions. These shows allowed him to connect directly with audiences, stripping the music down to its core, often performing songs that spanned his entire career, from early Buckingham Nicks material to Fleetwood Mac classics and solo compositions. And in these moments, it became clear that his relationship with the music itself had always been the most important one. Rather than dwelling on past conflicts, Lindsey focused on storytelling, sharing insights into how certain songs were written, what inspired particular guitar parts, and how moments of uncertainty often led to the most meaningful breakthroughs. Audiences didn't just come to hear the songs, they came to understand the man behind them, and what they found was not the intense perfectionist often portrayed in headlines, but a thoughtful, reflective artist who had spent a lifetime chasing authenticity. As the years moved forward, discussions about Fleetwood Mac's history became more balanced. Earlier narratives that painted Lindsey as difficult or controlling began to soften as more context emerged. Many fans and critics began re-evaluating his role, recognizing that much of the tension within the band stemmed from the impossible challenge of maintaining both creative excellence and personal harmony under constant global pressure. In hindsight, what once looked like stubbornness often appeared as deep commitment to the art. Stevie Nicks continued her own successful path, honoring the band's legacy while carving out space for her individual voice. Though their relationship never fully healed, there was a mutual acknowledgement of what they had created together, two artists whose connection produced music that neither could have made alone, and even without reconciliation, that shared history remained a powerful bond, etched permanently into the songs that defined an era. Fleetwood Mac's story, when viewed as a whole, became more than just the tale of a successful band. It became a case study in creative collaboration, showing how brilliance can emerge from friction, how art can be born from emotional complexity, and how success does not always bring peace. Lindsey Buckingham's journey embodied all of these truths. His rise, his struggles, his departures, and his returns mirrored the unpredictable nature of creativity itself. Today, Lindsey continues to write, perform, and experiment, his curiosity undiminished by time. He remains driven not by charts or awards, but by the simple need to create, to explore new sounds, and to communicate feelings that words alone cannot fully capture. His music has grown quieter, more nuanced, but no less powerful, reflecting a man who has learned to embrace both his strengths and his imperfections. Looking back, it becomes clear that Lindsey Buckingham's impact on Fleetwood Mac cannot be measured by albums sold or tours completed alone. His true contribution lies in how he reshaped the band's identity, how he challenged expectations, and how he insisted that honesty, even when uncomfortable, was worth pursuing. He turned emotional chaos into structured beauty, transforming personal struggles into songs that continue to resonate across generations. Fleetwood Mac may never reunite in its classic form again, but the music ensures that the band is never truly gone. Each song serves as a snapshot of a moment in time, capturing the emotions, conflicts, and connections that defined their journey. and at the center of that journey stands Lindsey Buckingham, not as a flawless hero or a misunderstood villain, but as a deeply human artist who gave everything he had to the music. In the end, his story is not about winning or losing, staying or leaving, it is about creation, about the cost of chasing something meaningful, and about the legacy that remains when the noise fades. Lindsey Buckingham helped create music that continues to comfort, inspire, and connect people around the world, and long after the debates and controversies are forgotten, the songs will still be playing, reminding us that true artistry leaves a mark that time cannot erase.